A little while ago, when I was looking for hobbies to distract myself from the fact that I was born to play the hardest games of all time,
The birth certificate ain't lying.
I got into reading. Now, when I was a wee little kid, I never liked reading. I found it boring and monotonous. I didn't like it. I never wanted to read another book in my life.
Irony really is my middle name.
When my mom gifted me her iPhone, there was this weird little yellow speck on my homepage. Books, specifically Apple books. Isn't it more suitable to call this Apple Library than Apple Books?
Why am I bitching about something from a company that separated monitors from monitor stands and sold those monitor stands at around $1,000?
Inside this app, there are tons of books that you can read for free. It was mostly filled with classics, literature books, kids books, and some textbooks here and there. But there was one that caught my eye. Dracula. Now, the only knowledge I have about Dracula is that he is the vampire. That's about it. So I went in and read the book without a ton of expectations, and wow. Just to note, this is the first novel that I have ever read. I read The Fellowship of the Ring, and that is considered a fantasy novel, but I didn't own it. An old friend just let me borrow it. So this is technically the first novel that I own, even though it's free in the Books app. Whatever. So the novel has an interesting approach where each chapter is a diary log of each one of the characters, i.e. in the first person perspective. And the story begins with a guy named Jonathan Harker, an Englishman, I think. Look, I finished the story months ago now, so I'm just spitballing what I feel is the actual story. So Jonathan is sent to Transylvania to do some paperwork, something about real estate, with a guy named, you guessed it, Count Vlad Dracula. After Jonathan stops being oblivious to the creepy shit that's happening inside the castle, he encounters Dracula doing vampire shit. He gets captured by 3 hot vampire ladies. When he failed to escape the castle, he found Dracula inside a coffin and smacked him on the head with a shovel. He also finds out that Dracula is shifting 50 boxes of earth to a bunch of places in London or something. And this last diary log shows him escaping a bunch of madmen and trying to escape through the castle walls. Then it cuts to 2 ladies talking to each other over the mail. Mina Harker, Jonathan's fiance, and her friend Lucy Westenra. So Lucy was talking about getting married, and she has but 3 choices to marry. A doctor who diagnoses a madman talking about bugs and shit, totally not related to Dracula or his evil cult. An American, and a fancy British guy. Right, I forgot to mention that all of this takes place in the 1800s, which explains why almost everyone in the story is so collected and eloquent. In the end, Lucy marries the British guy, but the other 2 seem pretty chill about it, and the 3 dudes become friends. Why can all nationwide problems be resolved like this? Alright, that's a cute little tangent, but let's head back to the main stuff. Dracula boards the ship Demeter along with the 50 boxes of earth, and for many long days across turbulent seas, he tortures the ship's crew and makes landfall on some coast in England. I'm not great with geography, so after Dracula made landfall, Jonathan came back sick and Lucy also got sick. Jonathan was doing alright through his sickness, but Lucy's condition was gradually getting worse, so she called Dr. Robotnik. Ivo could not determine the true nature of Lucy's illness, so he called his old friend and mentor, Dr. Abraham Van Helsing.
1 year! It will take me 1 year to summon an army from the guts of hell itself.
Need someone to tag along and tell weird personal stories?
You can tell I love a character when I call them their full name. So Van Helsing is a smart Dutch guy who happens to be the only person in the story who knows much about vampire stuff, and with this strange knowledge, he concludes that dear Lucy has a severe case of the its. He told her to do some stuff with garlic flowers and to keep the windows closed, but her mom threw the flowers out the window and kept it open. I never understand why some people leave their windows open when they sleep. I know it allows fresh air to come into the room, but when it's nighttime, it just makes it easier for people to sneak into the room. Now, that was never a case of mine because my house is fortified like a dungeon, but still. So Lucy got increasingly sick to the point where the boys need to donate blood. Now, blood transfusion was pretty new at the time, so it wasn't the safest nor the cleanest way to help revitalize someone, but for this story specifically, it was the only best option they have. Night after night, all the boys donated their blood, including Van Helsing, but unfortunately, Lucy died. And when Lucy was buried in a graveyard, a mysterious pale woman was seen biting little children. I wonder who could that be? The boys heard it, they saw that the woman was Lucy, the boys were horrified, they freed Lucy from vampirism by killing her in her sleep, the boys were horrified, Jonathan got well, and since Jonathan was the only person to know about Dracula, the boys came. Van Helsing spends an entire chapter talking to Mina Harker, who read Jonathan's diary during his time in Dracula's castle, and they both share notes about how to find and kill Dracula. Meanwhile, the boys, Jonathan included, roam the streets of somewhere in England to find the missing boxes of earth of Dracula. They found all but one, and while they were searching for the last one, they left Mina alone in her own room and Dracula showed up right beside her. Great security, guys. Luckily, they showed up just in time. Unluckily, Dracula bit her, or did something evil, I forgot. The boys found that Mina was ill, the boys were horrified. However, whatever Dracula did helped Mina find out his precise location. So the boys all chose to ride on horseback while Van Helsing and Mina traveled by a ship. So Van Helsing and Mina arrive at Dracula's castle. They find a large tomb with Dracula's name engraved on it. They encounter the hot vampire woman from the beginning of the story. Van Helsing killed him with his chastity belt. Meanwhile, the boys hunt down a bunch of madmen protecting Dracula. Jonathan cuts Dracula's head off, while the American stabs him with a wooden stake. The American died. Jonathan and Mina had a son named after the American. The doctor and the British guy got married, not to each other though. Van Helsing is Van Helsing, Dracula's dead, and the story's finished. I really like how each character describes each event in the form of a diary. It gives us a better understanding of the mentality of each individual character. I love all of the characters equally, even though I forgot the names of the two of them. Dracula, on the other hand, is kind of a mixed bag for me. He's more present in the first part of the story than in the following chapters. In the first few chapters, we get to see the history of Dracula through his own words. However, once the story shifted back to the other characters, mainly the parts when Lucy was sick and the boys were all forming a plan, Dracula's presence was just kind of flattened for me. It's like Sauron in a way. He is an active threat in the story, but he's not technically present. Also, I didn't really like how cheap Dracula's defeat was. I mean, he's sleeping, so it would make it easier to kill him than if he were awake, but still. So that was the infamous novel of Bram Stoker, Dracula. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It's a classic, everyone should read it. It's awesome. Oh fuck.